Inflation stayed static at 6.3%.
So the biggest thing is activity has increased.
It demonstrates that there's a confidence returning to the market. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Water Cooler. We are recording in mid-October to give you an update as to what's happened in the dental practice goodwill market over the first 6 months of this year, and indeed more importantly over the last 3 months for the quarter coming to the end of September. The reason why I quoted the date at the outset is we're recording this on the day that the inflation figures have been released, covering the month of September, which demonstrate that inflation stayed static at 6.3%, which may not sound like particularly great news, but I think it probably does demonstrate that we're coming towards the end of this relatively tumbled period, shall we say, where there's a lot of uncertainty around inflation and interest rates. And in fact, I think what a lot of the punditry is saying this morning is that actually this probably means we are coming towards the end of the interest rate saga, and in fact probably 5.25% is probably where interest rates are going to hit their high, so which adds a lot more certainty back into the market as to what people are going to be paying for debt. And I think that's certainly something we've already started to feel, I think, over the last sort of 3 months or so.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing has been increased activity, and I think that all comes down to people being a lot more confident within the market. So that's individuals, and that's potentially new groups entering the market, or groups that were holding off acquisitions coming back into the market. So the biggest thing is activity has increased quite dramatically, hasn't it? Is in terms of individuals where we were seeing, let's say, 3 or 4 people looking at going to a viewing for an independent site, that's increased now to 5 to 7, and some really strong offers. If we look at the multiples in some of the independent practice sales that have agreed recently, you're looking at kind of anywhere between 4 to 4.4 times FMT, and on some of the group deals still averaging between 7 and 8 times.
Yeah, so we've definitely seen a market that's come back, I think, because I think it's probably fair to say that the market, in comparison to what it was 18 months ago, is a very different market. And we've almost been through a whole cycle in 18 months, which is unheard of, in the sense of the fact that we've seen a significant cooling from where the market was 18 months ago. I think what you'll probably add to that is probably more on the group end of the market, though.
Yeah, I think the cooling came from the groups, and the groups taking a backward step. What we've got to remember is there isn't really a group out there looking to sell to a private equity group. So a lot of the group transactions have already happened, and how groups work is in cycles. Pretty much like everything in dentistry is a cycle, and the groups work in a cycle that when they're gearing up to sell to a private equity group or a trade sale, they look to buy as much EBITDA in as possible, where when they're at the beginning of the cycle, i.e. they've recently been bought out, they take a much more cautious approach. They look at how they can increase the EBITDA from their group internally and look to make savings, and that means that they're not as aggressive as in terms of their acquisition strategy as they would be, let's say, 3 years down the line. So the group softening has happened. I think the prices are where they should be if an agent values them correctly, but we're starting to see more confidence, and the more groups that come back to the market, like my dentist, who have recently just bought a 3-site practice, a 3-site opportunity office in Birmingham, the more groups like that come back into the market, it's only going to strengthen the multiples that are being achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to what I was saying, is the fact that we've had that cooling, and then conversely, I think particularly towards the back end of this quarter, which covers probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of September, it's almost like someone put their foot back on the pedal again, because it seems like the market's come back full throttle. I mean, we were agreeing like 6 or 7 deals a week in those back end of those weeks, which demonstrates, whilst there are some seasonal trends to it, but certainly not to that level. I think it demonstrates that there's a confidence returning to the market.
Confidence from individuals, and confidence from banks as well, confidence in lending, and I think that's the key message. Still 70 to 80% of our deals are sold to independents, and they need confidence in the lending, they need confidence in cash flows, they need confidence in NHS and recruitment. And one of the biggest things is kind of on the ground is recruitment is becoming slightly easier. I mean, that's what we're hearing is in terms of finding dentists and auxiliary staff. And again, all of these little points, recruitment, interest rates stabilising, it really adds confidence to the market. It means that there's more people out there looking to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what that's seeing as well is then what you have in addition to that is that where you get more confidence and you get more buyers in the marketplace, that's when pricing starts to change, isn't it? And that's, whilst I'm not saying we're in a process at the moment where prices are starting to go up again, in fairness, because that would be an unfair reflection, what we are seeing is stability around pricing. So if we're putting a practice on the market at a certain price, is achieving that price in the vast majority of areas, which again demonstrates a market that is now functioning properly again, as opposed to the last 12 months or so, where there's been lots of micro activities and micro reasons why various different things that happened, whether that be interest rates, whether that be recruitment crises, whether it be mergers within the sector. We've now gone through a lot of those challenges, and while some of them may not be fully resolved, people have got confidence around what those challenges mean for them and how that affects what they buy and when they buy it.
Yep.
So in conclusion, I think it's probably fair to say that now, from a seller's perspective, we're in a market now which is best placed to serve you well. Obviously, it's really important that but in a market where multiples are lower than they were 18 months ago, that you are preserving your EBITDA, so you're still maintaining your overall purchase price, which probably brings in the benchmarking report that we released earlier on in the quarter, which talks about average costs and spend and incomes per head in dental practices. You can download that on our website freely. And as Phil said, we will be releasing a lot of what we're talking about today in our interim goodwill report, which will be released in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. But if you have got any questions about practice valuation, or you want an update to your valuation, feel free to drop us a line and we can arrange someone to pop out and see you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.